Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Standard Definition, the Retro Nostalgia Podcast here on the Boss Rush Network. I'm one of your hosts, Corey Dirrig, and alongside me for this very special episode is none other than the joy of EXP Cast, Stoy, Jovic.
Man, I was really trying all day to think of like a really good Raiders of the Lost Ark quote to follow that up with, but yep.
I mean, you could just pull out a gun and shoot me.
I could do that.
Also joining us, very, very, very special guest, a man that is near and dear to my heart, is the man, the myth, the legend, now with facial hair, apparently.
Yeah, I can do this now. Who knew? Who knew?
Matthew Kiel. Hello, Matt.
Corey Dirrig, how are you, sir?
I'm oddly, I feel like we've just gotten in a time machine and went back in time, 3 years.
Yeah, the only difference is, I've moved a floor in my house. I actually have a PC now, and the records are basically gone. You get board games.
Why are your records gone? No.
Well, no, they're just downstairs.
Look,
I'm not moving that shit upstairs. That shit's heavy.
We don't podcast for this long, and all of a sudden you have facial hair. There's no records. You have an office. Bagels.
Sounds like you haven't been inviting him on in a long time.
Bagels still here, so I guess that's
Bagel's still around.
Consistent.
Yeah. He still sounds like Chewbacca and Jar Jar Binks had a love child too. So
Well, that's fair.
I'm still married to Reba. She's still here.
Yeah, Reba's still here. That's a good consistent as well.
Yes, we are exactly 7 days from our 5-year anniversary. So our 5-year dating anniversary.
Wow!
Congratulations.
We just celebrated our 8-year dating anniversary 3 days ago. So as of this recording,
nice.
Well, Matt, you. How do I want to put this? You're kind of the...
I'm the new guy here.
Yeah, you're the new guy here. So, and you do a bunch of stuff.
Yes.
You're not just here to. I mean, you are just here to hang out, but you do stuff. You do things. Why don't you tell people what you do, so people can follow what you do? I mean, is what I do worth fun? Anything good except for my job. I'm a radiologic technologist, and I do take that pretty seriously. But my name is Matthew Kiel. You can follow me at @infinite_rewind on Twitter. I host 3 podcasts, one about video games called Story Route Zero with my buddy Moose, my buddy Jason, and my buddy Michaela. The other 2, the music one is called Trivial Merit. My friend Caroline, who also writes for Popular Mechanics, she and I come together every couple of weeks, pick a band or a musical style, and we make an 8-song playlist to get us from a negative mood to a positive mood, and the extremes to each mood are controlled by dice rolls. So tune in for that. That's actually starting up before the end of January. I had some personal stuff happen over the holidays, so it's kind of pushed a lot back. But finally, the podcast I do on film, my friend Jess and I basically pick a movie, and we watch that within 2 weeks, and we come back and we talk about it. We also watch a whole bunch of other stuff and talk about that as well. But we pick one movie for the show, and each the Story Route Zero, we just recorded our first episode of 2022. That should be up before the end of this week. And I usually put up a little preview of the other shows, and I'll start doing that for Story Route Zero on my Twitter feed. So @infinite_rewind, that's where to be if you're looking for me. Yeah. Well, Matt, I've missed you. I hope you
missed you too, man.
I hope you come around more often than just, once every 3 years, like a werewolf or a vampire or something. I don't know.
The IRS.
Yeah, that too. I got to keep all my episodes for 7 years, so when you come audit me, I can.
Well, you think about it, we're like, what? We started This is the first year of Nerds Gone Rogue expires by that.
I know.
By that logic this year.
I know. 2015, I think we started throwing that show around, and then
yeah.
Wow, who knew?
Yeah.
Anyways, we're not here for our we are here for nostalgia, I guess, but not that kind of nostalgia.
Not 7 years nostalgia. We're talking 40 years nostalgia.
That's Boss Rush podcast tomorrow.
Yeah.
So this is Standard Definition, the retro nostalgia podcast here on the Boss Rush Network, where each and every Sunday we come together with our friends from around the internet to talk about the games, movies, shows, and other topics that make us nostalgic. You can support us and get the show 2 weeks early by heading over to Patreon, patreon.com/Boss Rush Network for just $1. Or subscribe on free feeds and you can get it 2 weeks later. If you listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review. It's much appreciated. You can catch all of our content on our YouTube channel or on bossrush.net. Remember, we're doing a full MCU rewatch and review as well, so you should check that out.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. We're on Iron Man 2.
Okay. We still got a ways to go.
Yeah. We're also doing a Disney animated feature in review.
Oof.
We're on Pinocchio.
What's that, the third one?
Second. Stephanie's hosting that.
And I thought Snow White was the first.
Yeah.
Fantasia was second, I thought.
Pinocchio came out in June and Fantasia came out in November of 1940.
Oh, not bad.
Yeah. I only know that because I have the list sitting right in front of me.
Sure, yeah. No. I would have assumed you did your research on that one.
Yeah. Actually, Stephanie's hosting that, which is pretty exciting. She did very well on her first episode of Snow White. So
nice.
Yeah. Anyways, merch store. We're doing Raiders of the Lost Ark, so I'm announcing here on this episode that the Indiana Jones Standard Definition logo shirt is now available on the store. You can also get the Standard Definition Marvel logo as well. All right, let's talk about our featured film of tonight's episode, Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Technically just called Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, before the Indiana Jones tag.
Yeah, well, George Lucas likes
before
to
they
change.
sequelized it to death. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, it's no Star Wars.
That's true.
So, no special edition here. Right.
Well, I don't think it was intended to be anything more than Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, I think it was just supposed to be a one-off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was actually Steven Spielberg who wanted to do more with the character, so they ended up doing more with it. So the synopsis of the movie Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark takes place in 1936. We meet an archaeology professor named Indiana Jones in the jungles of South America as he searches.
Not his real name.
It's not revealed until The Last Crusade, which we will get to in like a month. Okay?
Okay, fine.
Relax. Henry Jones Jr.
I'm jumping the gun.
You named the dog Indiana.
Dog.
By the way,
named after the dog.
Sean Connery, Indiana Jones lines was like a staple of our old podcast. So
yes.
If we revert to that sometime in this episode.
We must go to Berlin.
I wrote it in my diary so I wouldn't have to remember.
Oh, thank God. It's fake. See, you can tell with the cross section.
You didn't give the diary to Marcus, did you?
Marcus
gets lost in his own museum.
We named the dog Indiana. Indiana Jones is in the jungle of South America as he searches for a golden statue. Unfortunately, he sets off a deadly trap in the process, but miraculously escapes. Back at his university, Jones hears from the museum curator named Marcus Brody about a biblical artifact called the Ark of the Covenant. He says it holds the key to human existence. Jones heads off to foreign places such as Nepal and Egypt to find the artifact. However, his ever-present enemy, Rene Belloc, and a flock of Nazis are in hot pursuit of it too.
They call him Baloche.
Rene Belloc and a flock of Nazis is my favorite 80s neo-Nazi band.
It's interesting because the way they talk about, like in the initial setup when Marcus Brody tells them about the Ark of the Covenant, they do their research. I think they were actually approached by the OSS at the time, because the OSS was like the CIA pre-World War II, and
Right.
they were investigating into what Hitler's doing, because Hitler was like, was a nut on the subject of the occult. That's what they're saying. So like they're wondering like, why is he doing all this digging in northern Africa and stuff? And he wants Indiana Jones to go there to find out what it is. So
yeah, man. So this movie had a budget of $20 million, which is a lot of money in 1981, and its box office total was $389.9 million. So it's safe to say that this was a bona fide hit.
I'll say.
Yes.
Yeah. Other notable films and entertainment in 1981. For Your Eyes Only, 007 came out that year. The Evil Dead, Fox and the Hound, Clash of the Titans, Mad Max 2, Escape from New York, Halloween 2, Porky's, Endless Love. Those were the big films that year. Games.
Clash of the Titans, one
Right.
of Harryhausen's last films, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't realize Evil Dead was that old.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Evil Dead's
Yeah. Video games that came out that year, pretty important ones. Donkey Kong, Frogger, Miss Pac-Man, Kaboom, one of my personal favorites.
Yes.
Zork 2.
Corey's origin story.
Yeah, Kaboom is literally my video game origin story. Zork 2 and Ultima 1 all came out that year.
See, now, I did not realize Ultima was that old. I thought we were still a couple years away from it.
Yeah. I fact checked that because I thought it was newer than that too, but apparently it was. Big pop culture events that year. Lady Diana married Prince Charles. It was a big thing, I suppose.
It's a huge feel-good event when the royalty gets married, because we got to celebrate the people who a long time ago just said they were better than everyone else, and someone believed them.
Some say they still do that.
Oh yeah, they totally do.
Space Shuttle Columbia takes its historic first mission to space with 2 astronauts. And the DeLorean, the famous vehicle from Back to the Future, also debuted in 1981. So, yeah.
There's also one other notable event that happened that year.
What, Stoy was born?
Yes, I was born. Anyway, moving on.
I'm a 79 baby.
All right, so overall thoughts on Raiders of the Lost Ark. This was the first time I sat down and seriously watched this movie in a long time. I always have Indiana Jones on in the background while I'm working on stuff or doing other things, because it's just one of those series that I like to have on in the background because it's fun and not really pay attention to. This movie's a lot better than I actually remember it being. Like, I mean, I know it was good, and I knew it did a lot, obviously, for action films and stuff. But like, man, this movie's good.
Yes, it's a ride. I always, anytime I watch any of these movies, with the exception of the second one, I forget just how much fun they really are. This one in particular, it kind of just grabs for your jugular and doesn't really let you go. There aren't very many quiet moments, and the quiet moments you get are either tense or nervous.
Yeah.
And while the connotation of that could be negative, it's not here. I don't think any of this is. There's not really there's not a whole lot of negativity in this film.
Well, I think that speaks to Steven Spielberg's directing style a bit, is that he can make the most mundane scenes be ripe with character development, or like a quiet scene of no talking for like 2 minutes, and that really shows you like what that character is about, or what that, I mean, even like what that character's feeling at the time. Like he learned that as a very, very early on, because obviously we know Steven Spielberg's biggest first real hit was Jaws, and then obviously he moved on to Raiders. I think pretty much was his next big hit after that movie.
Mm-hmm. Like he had a couple.
But yeah,
of,
I don't think it's bad at all.
Between, yeah.
I don't think it was bad. Like those are bad things of like even like when there's nothing going on or not in a lot of action or whatever. Like I think it's it's nice, quiet, relaxing moments up until the next big thing.
Yeah, I mean, and his use of, I mean, is Lucas the screenwriter here? I forget.
Yeah, he was the screenwriter.
Okay, I feel like okay. The
actually,
use of comic timing here.
Actually, Lawrence Kasdan was the screenwriter based on a story mock-up by George Lucas.
That's what okay. That makes more sense then.
I guess that makes more sense, yeah, because I think it was the same with Star Wars even.
Yeah.
Because Kasdan would use a lot of this in a lot of this type of comic timing in The Right Stuff, which is 100% not a comedy, but there are plenty of funny moments in it. And yeah, I think the use of comedy here is done to a startling degree, a very adept degree, even after repeated viewings and things that have sort of sunk into popular culture. Just the lexicon around sci-fi, fantasy, action, all of that.
Yeah. I for a long time I said that Raiders was actually kind of maybe one of my least favorite of the movies. Last Crusade is still my favorite. I still think Last Crusade is the best movie. We've been saying that for years about how Last Crusade.
Last Crusade. I mean, you could say what you want about what's best, but I will always prefer to watch Last Crusade over any of the others on any given day.
Yeah,
I have a tough time between the two because Temple of Doom. It's, albeit the most different one, had a lot of unique properties in it and a lot of unique storytelling moments. A lot more comedic, I think, than the other two.
Right.
But I think it still stands out on its own as like still a great movie. But yeah, I'm torn between which one I like better, Raiders or Last Crusade.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. After rewatching this, I think I can safely say that this is a close second for sure. I just forgot how awesome of a character Marion is. Really?
Oh yeah, she's awesome.
Really awesome in this movie, and like how important she feels to just the overall, I guess, lore of Indiana Jones, and it made me think like I'm really gonna miss her in the next two movies because she's just so great, and she's his equal in a lot of ways in this movie. Which
we missed her in Crystal Skull.
We'll get there. Matt and I.
Yeah, let's not sully this one yet.
Sorry.
I'm on record saying that Crystal Skull is a totally watchable movie until like the last 5 minutes.
I mean, well, see, here's the thing, so predominantly video games are talked about on this network. Yes, I think we can say that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So where do y'all stand with Uncharted? I know Corey loves Tomb Raider.
Yeah,
I love Uncharted.
Okay, so none of those franchises are really possible without Indiana Jones.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
And with Crystal Skull ending the way it does, it just basically that gives Uncharted its answer every time. It's just aliens every time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially Uncharted 3.
It's just aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've actually.
Well, I mean, we could go into a long discussion, I guess, about the reasoning, because there is a reason why Crystal Skull was written the way it was, because it was a product of its time in the 50s.
Oh, sure.
But I just didn't like that we had this really strong, independent Marion in Raiders. She was went out on her own, running her own bar in Nepal, out in the middle of nowhere.
She didn't take no guff from anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she was, even though she was kidnapped, she was still fighting. At the end, she was fighting. I mean, she fought throughout that whole movie. And then we got this like weak little character in Crystal Skull that I'm like, what'd you do to Marion? What'd you do to her?
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. But like, I mean, even the whole like bar scene, or when she's kidnapped and trying to escape and trying to pull the drinking game on, what's his name? Belloc. And like, yeah, it's like she does so many cool things in this movie that's just like, man, I wish she was in this entire series. I wish she was like, I mean, as much as, don't get me wrong, as much as I like Short Round and stuff in the next movie, which I know Temple of Doom technically takes place before Raiders of the Lost Ark, but man, Marion is missed.
Yes.
And I always wondered why she never did the other two movies. I didn't look it up, but I want to know why she didn't do the other two movies.
I think Karen Allen just became sought after in Hollywood. I think that was just it. Because I don't remember what her career was prior to Lost Ark, but I know like in the 80s she had a decent amount of work. And it also could be that Lucas and Spielberg just didn't write for that character too.
Yeah.
I want to say loosely James Bond had an influence, because you had to have a different new fresh femme fatale in every movie.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
So it was kind of like a product of the whole James Bond series, where there were good femme fatales in each movie on their own, but it was like a different one in each one, with the exception of the more recent ones, where some of them returned. But it was the same with this one. Obviously, I don't know if Marion would have fit in the story of Last Crusade. It would have been interesting, but I think it would have changed the story almost too much.
Yeah.
I mean, it really would have played up the family drama angle of Last Crusade. Because,
yeah, right.
I mean, we all like. I mean, I don't know how your respective family dynamics are, but my wife is a pretty good hype person for me. And when my parents would make me feel a little bit down, she'll be the one to be like, no, you're better than that. So I could see a lot of that happening with Marion in The Last Crusade, and I actually kind of want that. Release the Snyder cut of that movie, please.
the 4-hour black and white version of it.
With 2 hours of uncut Marion footage, that'd be great.
Awesome.
They're just sitting there. Yeah.
It's
but it's just out of the vault.
No, it's just the 2 hours her and that guy are sitting there drinking. That's literally the scene of it.
That would have been interesting.
Oh man, but yeah, this movie's great. Obviously directed by Steven Spielberg, who just is masterful at these types of movies. Man, you just think of Steven Spielberg's resume too, like even after this. Like Indiana Jones, E.T., Jurassic Park. Like, it's just, man, this guy.
Yeah. He's going places.
Yeah.
I have a feeling he's important.
I feel like he's going to have a major hit on his future. All right, so let's talk about some of the characters and kind of, Matt, what we kind of do on the show. We don't really go through the plot. We just kind of talk about the characters, and we go by character and kind of just talk about the moments that they're in and our favorite moments with these characters and how they interact with each other and stuff. Indiana Jones, obviously played by Harrison Ford. You may know him, little actor named Harrison Ford.
Han Solo.
Yeah, Han Solo. It's actually a Han Solo origin story, everybody. Indiana Jones. Except we did get that movie.
Yes.
I watched this movie and like I understand that this movie was in the 80s and like acting wasn't as good as it seems now in a lot of cases, or just the way it's filmed or anything, but he's clearly just like a 3 steps above everybody else in this movie, at least.
Oh yeah, 100%.
He's so good. Yeah. His mannerisms and his like there's the one point when he is down in the pit of snakes when they're like staring down at him, and he's like laughing out loud, and then he turns his head and he's like, oh, son of a bitch, like he's just like like there's little stuff like that throughout the entire movie that just makes him just stand out so much in this movie. He like and people say like, oh well, you can just recast Indiana Jones and make him a James Bond style character now, and it's like, I think part of that's true, but also you need a very specific person that can almost mimic the way that Harrison Ford plays the character, like,
I will admit, and not to bring this up, but the guy that played Solo, the guy that played Han Solo in the Solo movie, I forget his name. He did a decent job, of really trying to copy his mannerisms and his speech patterns.
Alden Ehrenreich.
A lot of
Ehrenreich.
Like I could see Harrison Ford mannerisms in him. Like I was like, well, he's trying to pull it off. Whether it's good or not, it's a topic for another story. But yeah, you're right. Just how even in the most serious of circumstances, he's got this kind of like sly comment, or there's just little like, smart ass attitude about things or whatever. And yeah, it's just especially when he's in trouble. Like he'll like kind of like deflect trouble. Like it's just like the scene where like he busts that guy out of the truck, and like I don't know, like what was it? Some guy falls on the roof of the truck onto the hood, and then falls off, and then he just laughs at the other guy who he was just fighting with. And he's like, yeah, okay, let's go back to fighting. It's like those little moments is just like so cool.
Yeah,
like, that like I don't think anybody else can pull that off.
Yeah, or even the scene where in the marketplace where the big story around that scene was he was so sick and they had been filming all day, and he was supposed to get in this huge brawl with the guy, and he just pulls out his gun and shoots him, and like that was a totally ad lib scene, right? And it just worked. It was so good, it just worked. It was so good.
Can you imagine? We were this close to having Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones. God, I shudder to think about that.
I know. Gosh, that would have been.
He didn't think it would be a good because I think he was like starting Magnum PI or something like that. Yeah, he put all his chips in that basket.
Which I mean, worked out for him, I guess. But
they became icons for different reasons, and they are still icons for those reasons today.
Could you imagine Indiana Jones with a Tom Selleck mustache?
Oof. Tom Selleck was something. He was some Indiana Jones ripoff in the 80s. What was it?
I don't remember.
Was it not Magnum PI?
No, it was something else. I'd have to.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So in fact, look that up, and I'm gonna do a little riffing here, because I think what people don't realize about Harrison Ford is his first role is not Star Wars. He had done movies for accomplished directors prior to getting involved with the Spielberg, George Lucas crew. Francis Ford Coppola, he was in The Conversation. He was also in American Graffiti with George Lucas. He was a very good actor in things that he did. Granted, I remember him from Michelangelo Antonioni's Zabriskie Point, but I don't expect everybody to remember that.
That film.
Yeah, exactly. I remember him in Jacques Demy's first American film called The Model Shop, and he was. Was he 100% right for those roles? Not necessarily. He was still very young and still, he still had ways to go. By the time he's in Apocalypse Now for Francis Ford Coppola, it's clear that he's learning a craft to take control of a scene in a way that he does. Now, he's not a strong character in Apocalypse Now by any stretch, but the way that he plays the character that he plays, he's clearly taking it seriously. He clearly wants to bring, clearly wants to bring his craft forward. And I think, being the
brawny comic relief in Star Wars definitely showed that he could do that. Mm-hmm. While we can talk about whether or not Tom Selleck could be a good Indiana Jones, I don't think anybody but Ford at the time could have played Han Solo the way he did.
Agree.
Yeah. Now, does that mean Han Solo was a very difficult character to play? No, but I just think Harrison Ford will always be Han Solo. Mm-hmm. I just think there's really no other way around that.
Yeah.
And and Harrison Ford, the way he acts and the way he sort of carried his acting throughout his career, from the Clancy films that he was in, versus Star Wars, even the quiet dramas like Peter Weir's Witness. He's definitely a callback to older Hollywood in a way. I would say more of a I would say a less nuanced, like Paul Newman or Robert Redford. Maybe even drawing a blank. Probably not as lumbering as John Wayne, but definitely that kind of screen presence. I think that was carried on by Russell Crowe for a time. So yeah, there's a tradition of actors like Harrison Ford in Hollywood, and just films as a whole. I think Anthony Quinn did that well. I mean, Rock Hudson did it well too. But yeah, there's always going to be room for actors like Ford, and Ford is probably one of the best of those in American cinema history for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely iconic in that role, and I am going to be when I'm assuming Indiana Jones 5 is going to be his last hurrah as this character as well, right? I mean, I'm hoping at least. No offense to him, but I don't know. I kind of want to go back, right? Go back to him fighting Nazis and not during the Cold War or anything, but
I only want him to continue doing it if he turns into Riggs from Lethal Weapon, where he just goes, "I'm getting too old for this shit."
I mean, we could probably have that discussion. Who would play Indiana Jones after Harrison Ford retires? But we can, I think we can save that for maybe the end of this.
It's an easy answer. No one. End it. End the series. That's it. If they'd ended it with Last Crusade and just left it alone, we would have been fine. I would have been fine.
Yeah.
Topic for another day.
Sure.
Yeah.
Marion Ravenwood is played very capably by Karen Allen.
Who absolutely rules.
Gosh, dude, when that opening scene with her in it, where she's out drinking the guy, and then she slaps Indiana Jones when he walks in, right? And
she doesn't slap him. That's a full
fisted punch.
Yeah.
I learned to hit you in the last 12 years.
She definitely stands up to him, and you can clearly see they have some sort of romantic history. And
a little bit sketchy if you do the math.
Yeah, well,
a little bit sketch, but that's okay.
To each their own. No, that's not good. That's not.
Probably not.
So
I mean, they didn't. That was one of those things. They didn't have to go into detail. You knew there was strife between those two, and there was a prior romantic relationship, and they just ended it with just that conversation of her literally ending it with, "This is my place. Get out."
Yeah.
And it's okay, all right. There's obviously a problem here, so Woof.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they kind of hint at it in this movie, but her father was his mentor. And so that's kind of where that romantic relationship comes from. But I think the whole bar scene with her is so good. Her kind of standing up to the Nazis when they walk in, and her kind of defending the bar, and then obviously the bar burns down and she goes with Indy. But I just think the bar scene is just probably one of the best scenes in the entire movie, for sure.
Yeah.
And then obviously when they get to Egypt and she escapes the truck that's blown up. Well, she's kind of kidnapped, but like that whole scene too, where Indiana Jones feels bad because he thinks she's dead, and he's kind of doing that whole thing. So
heartbroken Indy.
Yeah,
and the monkey's sad too. I felt bad for the monkey. Monkey was sad. He was quiet.
Backstabbing monkey. Fuck that monkey.
I know.
Yeah, fuck
bad
that guy.
Dates.
He got what he deserved.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
Bad dates. So,
what a weird introduction, that monkey. Let's talk about that monkey for a bit.
Indiana Jones is like, me too, monkey.
Yeah, look, I mean, just, the whole scene where all of a sudden, like, they're talking to the spy who's spying on, the local. He's got the monkey on his shoulder, and he's doing, like, say Kyle, whatever. And even the monkey does it. I'm like, you bastard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So monkeys can be Nazis, too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man. What do you guys like about Marion in this movie?
She's a badass.
Yeah, she's badass.
She's fierce. She's fiercely independent. It leads me to believe that the story that they crafted for her, what little we got, was that she was kind of an independent from probably a very early age, and she basically, probably revered her father and revered Indiana Jones, and love always burns you in the ass. So she decided to kind of like strike out on her own and do her own thing. So we have this fiercely independent woman that's just now trying to chase her family legacy, because obviously that Lost Ark kind of killed her father. Mm-hmm. And I think she still needed that closure to end that, because as you could tell in the movie, once she sees Indiana Jones for the first time, man, it's like all that started rushing back. Mm-hmm. So, I even still, despite having all those memories and those feelings and emotions pop right up once she sees him again, she's still fiercely dedicated and fiercely, wants to finish that story. So,
I also like the fact that my wife and I were having a conversation as we were watching this, and I was just talking about how much I have grown to dislike the second film. Not to dwell on that, but her response was, well, it's not like Marion hasn't been damseled here. I go, yeah, but if Marion's damseled, you untie her, she starts throwing punches. Whereas, the blonde, who I can't remember anything about her other than that she's married to Steven Spielberg. In the second movie, all she does is scream. It's just, Indy, save me. Indy, save me. And
admittedly,
that's not Marion.
She was living a life of luxury at one point, and then all of a sudden she's off in India, like trying to keep her heart from being ripped out of her chest. How about that for a day?
I mean, fair. I mean, fair. I'm not sitting here saying she's in the easiest situation all the time. Right. I just think that the real difference is, Marion will complain that she's tied up, but if you untie her, she'll get a knife.
Yep.
And go after and go after what needs to be defended. So
I mean, she literally does take a knife at one point.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Marion's cool. I like
Marion rules.
Yeah.
Marion rules.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So opposite Indiana Jones and Marion, we have Renee Belloc, played by Paul Freeman. He's a kind of like the bad guy archaeologist that's working with the Nazis to get the Ark as well. He's really kind of a douche.
Yes, he's a tool.
Yeah.
Yep.
So a couple weeks ago at this point, we did Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters, and I finally watched that film, by the way, Matt, so you can mark that off.
Nice.
That long list.
I'll find my list.
God. And he really, that villain in Ghostbusters, the not the main villain, but like the government guy from Ghostbusters.
Like Pecker.
Who's this Peck?
It just feels
Mr.
like
Pecker.
There's like an 80s villain like archetype, and they're like, you must play the 80s style villain this way, very like straight and no kind of like wavering at all. The only point where he ever wavers is when he's drinking with Marion, right? Like that's really the only point where he changes tone in this entire movie.
Well, that's another long, interesting conversation that we can have is how villains have changed in cinema or in any form of medium over time. Whereas like now when you watch a movie, you tend to sympathize with villains. Now they tend to have these like human emotional qualities that you're just like, I kind of feel for the guy. Like I think I'm kind of partially rooting for him. Whereas back in the 80s, it was like villains were villains. They had no redeeming qualities. They had no likable characteristics. They were just big raging douches that, like with the exception of that scene where he's drinking and he's a little bit loose, you kind of see how he's kind of being used by the Nazis for like a one little glimmer of a scene. But the rest of the time, this guy's like traps Indy in a snake pit and gets his face melted off at the end. It's like good riddance.
I mean, even at the beginning when he escapes the cave, he like sends the natives after him with the blow darts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's kind of a not great.
I mean, to dovetail on Stoy's point, I don't think that started. I think that there's actually a long tradition of like, I mean, the sympathetic villain or holding sympathy from the villain comes from the tradition of anti-heroes, and I just think that over time, and it didn't really happen with a lot of the big blockbusters of the 80s. I think if we were to pull out some more important ones, more important films of the 80s, you could probably get you get your Michael Douglas in Wall Street, where ultimately he is just a douchebag, but for some reason you are completely entranced by his douchebaggery. Same with Darth Vader. There's a certain charisma that the right performance and the right script can call for. Now, a lot of the bigger 80s action films didn't really do that. You didn't get nuance on the other side of the Terminator. You didn't get a whole lot of nuance out of the shark in Jaws. I mean, I know that was a 70s movie, but like the sequels, most of them came out in the 80s, and they're not great. But
you mean you didn't like Jaws 3D? No.
Like I said, you didn't really get that. You get that sympathy, that charisma out of Gene Hackman in the Superman movies, which a couple of them came out in the 80s. But I do agree. I think Belloc is a shitbag. I'm gonna say it. We could also talk about the colonialist tendencies that are all over this. The white folks going into brown people's homes and just sort of tearing it apart because history.
I mean, they literally are Nazis.
Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, there was one point at the towards the end where Indiana Jones threatens to blow up the Ark with that rocket launcher, and the one general guy. Well, no, maybe it was right before where they're on the ship. Where they're on the ship, where they're still on the ship, and he Belloc is convincing him that he wants to open it in a remote place because he doesn't want them to open it in front of, Hitler and
Berlin.
To say, oh well, what if there's nothing really in here? What if this isn't the real Ark or whatever? And even then, like the German guy is like, well, he makes some off comment about Jews in that on the boat, and it's a weird Jewish tradition or whatever. And I was like, man, these really are like just terrible people.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, at the boat where the German general kidnaps Marion and he calls the guy a savage.
Yeah.
And he says, "We will take what we wish and decide whether or not to blow your ship from the water."
Yeah.
It's like that's how they were, man. That's how it was, and they was portrayed accurately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They were shit heels.
Yeah.
Still are. This movie's really good.
I know, it's
Belloc.
so good.
Belloc is like a victim of his own selfishness. If you were to try to analyze his motivations, he's just a very selfish archaeologist, kind of like an anti-Indiana Jones, whereas Indiana Jones is like it belongs in a museum, it deserves to be seen and be shared with the public, whereas Belloc is like selfish by nature. He wants fame, he wants fortune, and that's what he does. That's what motivates him, and obviously selling his soul to the Nazis, even though he knows the Nazis are shitbags. It's like, I'm only here for my own selfish reasons. Yeah. And they are the means to my end. Right. So it's like that shouldn't paint a likable picture. I mean, he's still a shit eater, but still like he.
Well, let's talk about the differences between Indiana Jones and Renee Belloc, because guess what? They're the
same person.
They're the same person.
Yep.
Because here's the thing. Indiana Jones is sent by the government to discover this thing of knowledge, and it's all taken away from him. Not to spoil the end if you've not seen this 41-year-old movie.
Yep. Yeah, why are you listening to the show, by
the way? Yeah, it's being looked at by top men.
Top men.
Yep.
Yeah. All right.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right, because they have similar motivations, but I think the whole ends justifies the means arguments. That's where they differ a little bit, but
sure. I think ultimately, like their ends are different, because Belloc wants his own glory, and I think Indiana Jones, you could say he presents as more the altruistic, this is for history sort of thing.
Well, and even at the beginning, like Indiana Jones wasn't even convinced this was a worthwhile adventure. Like he was like, meeting with the OSS agents, and he's just like not even interested in this. He's like, I don't know, this is some sort of Ark of the Covenant, and like they're looking at what's that picture mean? And he's like, I don't know, Staff of Ra or some shit, whatever. Like he's like not even convinced this is even a worthwhile endeavor.
Dude, my mentor told me all this while he was drunk. Like
he's like, I don't know, man. Whatever, sure. You're paying me money, Like even like in the conversation that he had with Marcus.
What?
Yeah. Well, even when he was having that conversation with Marcus, like which we will talk about later, Marcus is like, how can you not be convinced this is real? And Indiana Jones is like, I don't believe in that superstitious mumbo jumbo. Like he's not convinced either.
Yeah. Which is hilarious, because if you think about it, like at this point, he'd already witnessed everything in Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
So, like, would he just, like, block it out of his brain?
You've already seen someone get their heart pulled out?
Well, writing continuity, I imagine, like I said, I don't think they planned on Temple of Doom when they were filming in the Raiders of the Lost Ark, so.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
Writing continuity.
Yeah.
Woo. And in the modern intellectual focus, we could say the trauma of Temple of Doom probably caused a mental block in Indiana Jones, so he just forgot about all of it. So.
Yeah.
Not to denigrate anybody's trauma, because I'm not trying to do that.
And maybe what he was seeing wasn't actually really real.
It was
anyway. Woo, deep.
You call him Dr. Jones, doll.
Marcus Brody, played by Denholm Elliott. He doesn't really play a big role in this movie, but
this is not the film to talk about Denholm Elliott.
Yeah, but I just
honestly, he plays a more bigger role in Last Crusade, but he's like the sidekick that, I mean, it shouldn't be a sidekick.
Yeah, he's just he's. I mean, I don't know.
I'll say this: they got the Uncharted games did something right in creating Sully instead of using a Denholm Elliott because. But I will say this: Denholm Elliott was a wonderful actor. I believe he passed away in the mid to late 90s. But if you've seen the movie Trading Places, he is Coleman, the butler. If you've seen the oft-forgotten Sting film called Brimstone and Treacle, I'll do another plug for Trivial Merit. We covered this movie. It's a trip. It's weird and kind of great. We had a wonderful guest named Maddie Lewis, who's a wonderful writer. She brought that film to us, and I have been kind of changed because of it. But
Denholm Elliott was a wonderful actor, and don't just look at him as Marcus Brody.
I do though, because all I can hear is Sean Connery, Marcus.
Well, let's admit that he was made to be a little bit more of a bumbling idiot in Last Crusade than he was in Raiders. In Raiders, he was a little bit more put together, a little bit more kind of intelligent, and a little bit more, kind of.
Yeah, but
for the little role that he played. But yeah, in Last Crusade, he kind of played as more like a bumbling doofus.
Yeah, which I'll have more to say about Marcus in the Last Crusade episode.
Yeah, he played a bigger role then.
He's also in A Room with a View, which is a very weird movie now. But yeah, he's actually pretty good in that movie too.
John Rhys Davies, by the way. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Sala.
Yeah, plays Sala.
Sala rules.
Sala rules. Yep. He's Indiana Jones' sidekick in this movie, pretty much, and he just whatever Indiana Jones asks, he does, right? Mm-hmm. And then, dude, the whole scene at the end of like his kind of main arc in the movie, where Marion kisses him, and he just gets this big grin on his face and starts singing. Yep. It's the best.
Yes.
A British man is a soaring soul, as free as a mountain bird.
You're gonna get a suit, Stoy.
Yeah. It's got to be at least 12 seconds.
I don't want to get DC'd or C&D'd or whatever they call that. So, I don't want you yet. Yeah. So I'm gonna stop there. 15 seconds.
Jonathan Rhys Davies is a wonderful actor with a very long career, and I always forget who he is, like in every movie, except for Sala. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, Corey, the final scene is just, it's pure joy with him. Yeah. Like just this one's for your wife, this one's for your daughter, and this one is for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like so cool.
Yeah, he's definitely great. And like even when the monkey dies and he grabs the date out of the air, he's like, bad dates. That line is so good too. Oh man, he's just so good in this movie.
Yeah.
He went to a different song afterwards. It was like, I am a monarch of the sea, I am a ruler of the coop. And then he stopped, and it's like, why'd you stop? Then all of a sudden, he did the date thing. Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
He's a singer.
Solid, he was such a good, like, they really downplayed what he did behind the scenes for Indy all the time. Like, he wouldn't have survived nearly half of his trip to Egypt if it wasn't for him and kind of like all the logistics that he set up, even him like kind of like getting through the camp to the dig site that he was supposed to go to. And even arranging for transport away, with the package. Like, it's just, he did so much, and it's like they really downplayed it, or they didn't really say much at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Indiana Jones were not an archaeologist but a hitman, Sala is his man on the ground that fixes everything for him. He's like, make sure.
The cleaner.
He's like, yeah.
Yeah. Alfred Molina makes an appearance in this movie as Satipo, I think is how you say that name. He's basically the 5-minute sidekick at the beginning.
He's there to die.
Yeah, he's basically there to die. But it was a good death.
Adios, senor.
Yeah. Very good death.
That whole opening scene is very just iconic, right? The ball, like he grabs the idol and the ball rolling is one of the most iconic cinema scenes in history. And then he, like when he escapes, he sees Alfred Molina's face just like gutted,
impaled. Yeah.
Yep.
And then, Ronald Lacey plays Major Arnold Todt, which is the guy with the Nazi with the glasses and gets his face melted. The iconic face melting scene at the end.
That's the funny thing, because I don't think his name is ever mentioned in the movie at all.
It's not. I had to look it up.
I had to look it up too, because like to this day I've watched this movie thousands of times. I still don't know his name until like I look it up and I'm like, oh yeah, it's Arnold, I guess.
Yeah.
So, what a weird dude, man.
Yeah.
Weird dude.
Yeah.
I feel like there's probably someone out there who is nerded out on Indiana Jones and Wolfenstein enough to connect these two franchises, and I feel like that villain is the origin for like Castle Wolfenstein for those Nazis. But yeah, like
he's just
what a performance.
Yeah, honestly, just creepy on a whole nother level. Like even that opening scene of him walking into Marion's bar and she's like, "You want a drink?" And he's like, we are not thirsty. It's like, what the hell is this dude?
Yeah. Also, he's kind of an idiot though, because like first of all, he does the Home Alone thing where he grabs the hot amulet and then he doesn't let go. First of all, if it's that hot, just let it go. Just let go. You know, you're gonna feel how hot it is before you know, and then like. And then he just screams, and then he runs out of the building, and then there's like the whole 5-second scene where he's like dancing in the snow and like trying to figure out how to, stick your hand in the snow.
Down.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Put your hand in the snow, dude. Like,
I mean, it's kind of interesting how that scene like played into later in the movie, how like how that actually had an impact, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just because when you find out like the burn on his hand actually gave a lot of detail to what the medallion said. So anyway,
yeah, I mean, I get it, but like, what an idiot.
No, it was he's kind of an idiot.
Yeah.
He's a complete picture of most of the Nazis' reign throughout World War II. Completely overconfident.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then his face melting scene is obviously iconic. You ever see the You ever see the candles that they sell of this guy's face, and you light it and it just melts? Like as the wax melts, it just reveals the skull underneath.
Oh man, I didn't see that.
I didn't know that, but that's kind of dope.
Yeah,
I do not want that in my house ever. But
like, no, you can watch it. You can watch a time lapsed YouTube video of it. It's fun. It's fun. I don't ever want it in my house.
Yeah,
because like I don't know, something about having a Nazi's head on my shelf seems kind of. Weird.
Yeah, I feel like my wife, who is of the Jewish faith, might have a few objections.
Same.
Maybe more.
Yeah. Same. Same. All right. Well, those are kind of like the main characters in this movie. Did we miss anybody besides like kind of like the government official guys or anything? Like, I don't know. I think we kind of.
I don't think so. I mean. Yeah,
I mean, no one really major. Obviously, there were actors that popped in and popped out and stuff. And
the black ship captain was cool.
Yeah,
we didn't talk about him at all, but that scene was cool. Couple of Easter eggs before we move on to kind of our favorite moments.
I'm watching the time lapse video right now. It's on IGN. It's not as it's not what you think, but
they tried.
So cool.
A for effort.
Yeah, A for effort.
Yeah.
Actual burn time of 8 hours.
Yeah. Wow. 8 hours to melt a Nazi's face, everybody.
Yep.
There you go.
Not fast enough.
Not fast enough. Especially that guy.
Yeah. Especially that
guy. There's a few Star Wars Easter eggs in this movie.
Yes.
They're in the hieroglyphs when they're lifting the Ark out for the first time. You can see hieroglyphs of Leia and R2-D2 in the hieroglyphs. Another hieroglyph is seen in the Well of Souls appears to depict Leia uploading the Death Star plans to R2-D2. Additionally, the plane Indy escapes on early in the film has the letters that read OBCPO. Clearly, it's another nod to C-3PO with Obi-Wan thrown in for good measure. Which there's actually a Easter egg in Temple of Doom as well, in Obi-Wan, Club Obi-Wan at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So we didn't there's a couple of moments we didn't really touch on. But what are our favorite moments that we didn't really touch on yet? I mean, I think the opening, we didn't really touch on the opening at all, really, which is
it's kind of hard because so much of this movie just seeped into popular culture.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's good moments everywhere in this movie, so it's a matter of like, what do you want to spend the most time on? Me personally, the best scene of the whole movie was the whole truck chase scene. That whole sequence, it was like 20 minutes long. It felt like was just probably one of the most iconic action sequences I think in modern movie history. Like it's just, there was no CGI, there was no special effects at the time, especially it was all Harrison Ford, stunt doubles, all these people, and it's just done so well. And the music, John Williams, let's give a shout out to that man, making some of the most iconic themes in movie history. Yeah, and just obviously besides the Indiana Jones theme music, the march, but just that whole music sequence was just start to finish, just one big score, and it's just puts you in that seat, and it's like you're on the edge of your seat the whole time during that whole sequence. Him like climbing through the truck, almost getting knocked down, crawling underneath the truck as it's still moving, crawling back up. Man, dude, so good.
It's so good. Oh,
I know,
man, so good.
They do that shit with special effects now. That's the problem. It's like, you do that with special effects now, where it's like weird camera trickery to show like, oh, it's not a real person, it's CGI, or like, they'll make someone do this like ridiculous backflip jump back onto the truck, where it's like, no, this was real at the time. Like this is what they had. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, I think they're good. They're positive and negative to it, but like, I feel like we have to remember that stunt doubles are people and they do get injured. Like,
I mean,
how many takes do you want to drag someone on a gravel road before?
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw actually in the sequence where I assume it's Harrison Ford's stunt double where he's crawling underneath the truck. There's actually a channel dug in to the ground.
Yeah, no,
where it's not like he's like being whipped around, like when he's like dangling off the side, but like there were definitely safety measures put in place to protect the guys to make a really good scene. And props to those guys. Don't know your names, but you guys are the real MVPs.
I mean, yeah, I think there are ways to do CGI well, and there are ways to do it poorly. Just like there are ways to do this type of action choreography safely, and the type of action choreography that causes people to get hurt. Most notably, recently, Alec Baldwin, shooting somebody. Or I think on the 80s movie of The Twilight Zone, someone died because of a helicopter crash in that. So I think that there's, we could poo-poo CGI all we want, but we also have to remember that if it's not CGI, you have to get people to do it, and that becomes a lot more difficult, a lot more chances for bad things to happen occur. But my favorite scene, apart from what is really sunk into the culture, is still the bare knuckle boxer.
Oh yeah.
Like for the longest time, and I don't know why, I still want this to just be my headcanon. I always thought that was the Iron Sheik from the 80s WWF.
You're talking about that where they're fighting underneath the airplane, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know why I always thought that was the Iron Sheik. It was probably something my dad said to me, and I just believed him because I was a kid. Sure. But I love that scene very well because it's almost like Spielberg put the scene on a timer. It's like, we can only last this long, and it's executed very well. All of the tension is dealt with very subtly, very adeptly, and then the climax and how the bare knuckle boxer gets defeated by a helicopter that eventually explodes, or no, by an airplane propeller that eventually explodes.
It's a perfect mini boss.
Yeah, exactly. It's like that's how you get past the mini boss.
Yeah,
through strategy, not through brawn.
Every 80s movies, those action movies had those like really cool like kind of mini bosses that just popped out of nowhere. Like, who is this? Oh, this is a big dude. Okay, all right. Let's see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy that would be the guy that was in Die Hard that survived being hung and shows up later to almost shoot everybody. Yeah, I know, Bagel. That guy's weird.
Yeah. I think that Matt, what you were talking about just now, the bare knuckle boxer fight and that whole airplane scene, even even what happens afterwards, right, where he has to like save Marion because the cockpit is locked, and then he grabs her, and then that whole trail of because somebody pokes a hole in that gas truck that's parked off to the side, very conveniently next to something that's on fire already.
Hey, let's not discount the fact that Marion went on the automated turret on the damn aircraft and started lighting the whole parking lot up.
Yeah.
And she was lighting dudes up again, like crazy, man.
Badass.
Who would badass? I know exactly.
You free Marion, she's on your side.
Yeah. She knocks the pilot out with these wheel chocks, and then all of a sudden mans the gun and starts. Come on.
Yeah. It's so good.
You free Marion, it doesn't just become an escort mission.
No, exactly.
Yeah. And then the other scene.
Become the president's daughter in Resident Evil 4. Go hide in a dumpster.
Carry my ammo.
God. The scene where he jumps off the boat and goes onto the Nazi submarine, and he kind of sneaks in, and just like the little things in that scene I really like too, where he kind of gives Bellic the shoulder when he walks by, and he takes out two Nazis to steal their clothes, and the scene where he's sitting on the floor trying to put the jacket on and it's too small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I forgot about that scene, and for some reason, I laughed so hard at that scene when he couldn't get it on. I don't know why. It's not even that funny. I looked up and he was
funny enough though.
Yeah.
Well, because it's that common trope of just like, hey, we need to sneak into this, so let's go knock these guards out, and the guards are always like the size is perfectly fit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, So it was kind of the scene that made fun of that whole trope of just like sometimes you're gonna knock out a guard and their clothes aren't gonna fit. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it worked out for him in the end because he found another guy.
Whenever I play Hitman, all the outfits fit. I don't get it.
Right.
I don't know, man. I really enjoyed watching this movie this time around, and I don't know if it's because I'm older and I just appreciate it more, or if I just paid attention really for the first time in like 20 years, but it did a lot for me. I really enjoyed it. We're going to talk about our least favorite moments, and the only moment I can pick out for this is the last scene. Not that like watching Nazis' faces melt is not fun or anything, but like that was the only point in the movie where I was like, man, this all feels just really fake, right? The green, and I know it was a product of the 80s and they were really experimenting with green screen at the time, or blue screen or whatever, but
stop motion.
Yeah. It just all felt like it did not fit with the rest of the movie. And I almost wish they would have watched it after it was edited and went back. And I know this would have been like impossible to do at the time, but like went back and be like, this didn't work. Can we reshoot this ending somehow and rewrite it or something? It just, I don't know. The whole thing just didn't really do it for me.
I tried to understand what that scene signified because I imagine it was like, the Ark of the Covenant, at least in, the story goes is that they carried that through the desert while they were running away from, Ramses. And I imagined those were the souls of the Jews that were kind of like wandering through the desert with Moses. So I imagine that's what the Ark of the Covenant signified, was that this stored all the dead souls of all those people, the however many people that in the mass exodus. So that's how that made sense to me in my mind, because I remember as a kid like watching this and I was like, that was a scene breaker for me too, because I was like, what the hell is this? And like kind of when I started to really kind of do a deep dive into Indiana Jones made me want to be an archaeologist. So I became a big student of history and ancient history and stuff like that. So I studied a lot of that stuff, and that was the only link I could come up with.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not. It doesn't seem like too far of a stretch, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think it's not that I had a problem with the end of the movie itself. The effects just don't hold up. I think it
definitely was a product of its time.
Yeah, watching Belloc's face just kind of explode just really looked like they just shot a chicken with a big bomb and it just exploded everywhere. And it's kind of shot in slow motion, so you kind of just see his body still there, but his hands and his face explode. But his body's still there, so it's like,
well, yeah, because it was like a weird like fireball that just slowly came up out of the box and then just like sat on his face for a bit and then just bam.
Yeah,
like, it was kind of weird.
Yeah,
definitely a product of its time though.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are those moments where special effects and CGI would definitely improve the scene.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and then you fast forward to like 1984 when the first Ghostbusters movie comes out, and like those ghost effects are not much better. Like they're definitely better.
A lot more clearer.
Yeah.
I mean, a little bit more detailed because let's admit a lot of those those are some low res ghost effects.
Oh, 100%.
In 1981, 100%. Like you could barely make out any detail.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same. It's the same tech that they use for Empire Strikes Back, though, right? Where in those original cuts, you can see through the snow speeders and see the effects behind, like through the cockpit of the snow speeder, and it's just what they had to work with.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's genius. It was like ingenuity at its finest. It's like you imagine a scene. This is what I want. And then you got a table of people sitting there, racking their heads, thinking, "How are we going to make this happen?
How do we invent stuff to do?"
Whereas nowadays, it's like it's super easy because it's like, oh yeah, just like have everybody sit around in a big white room, and then we'll do the effects later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there's nothing else about this movie I like really genuinely dislike really at all.
Yeah.
This movie.
My only thing that I didn't like, and it was like a continuity thing, is like, how did Indiana Jones jump off that boat, right? Swim to a U-boat, and that U-boat goes to an uncharted island and whatever. Like, how did he get in the submarine? How did he get in the U-boat? Did he just like kind of like hang on? And because that U-boat goes underwater, and like you can't open a hatch from the outside. I don't think. How did my man get in there?
Hatch must have been open.
I guess. I don't know. That never sunk well with me because I'm thinking like this man, like, I mean, that U-boat travels for miles.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
maybe it traveled. Maybe it just traveled above water the whole time.
Maybe it did. That's the only other thing I could think of.
Yeah,
so,
that's the only other thing. But like, also, you would think that the people in control of said U-boat would be like, maybe if we're in a U-boat above water, people will be looking for us.
I mean, it's the Nazis.
But see, here's the thing.
Said, they were hugely overconfident. So
yes,
I don't know.
This is where I get mad at all those people who are talking about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and they get mad about the refrigerator.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, no, you don't get to get mad because you ate this stuff up. Like all of a sudden, Indiana Jones can just breathe underwater forever because he's on a U-boat. Like, no, that's not how that works. That's not how that works.
I love that refrigerator scene. I don't know.
Me too. I'm like,
I laughed. I'm in the theater. I'm laughing. I was like, ha. That would never happen, but still.
Ultimately, the answer is it's all fake anyway.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie from beginning to end. Everything in the movie was great. That scene, I know, always stuck out with me because I'm thinking, I'm watching it the hundreds of times I have. Like, how's he get into the U-boat? You see him looking around, like looking for an opening. Like, how do I get into this thing? And you got a whole ship of people like cheering him on. Like, and he's like looking around like, how do I get in this thing?
Yeah. Also, I'm concerned about Marion's liver because she drinks a lot in this movie, and then she ends the movie by asking Indy if she can buy him a drink.
Which that's a power move. That is a power move on her part because in the 40s, a woman to come up to a man like that and say, "Can I buy you a drink?" That is a power move, and that's why Marion's the best. Oh God.
I didn't say it wasn't a power move. I said I'm concerned for her liver.
I'm saying it's a power move.
Look, man. Marion lost her father to this adventure that she and her would-be boyfriend were just on, and they almost died. She's earned that drink.
Hell yeah,
she's also probably drinking off like the being burnt by the love of Indiana Jones. Like maybe that, like I don't know how long.
So
has
what?
it been?
Now she's suffering from Stockholm syndrome now because like
real thing.
I'm just kidding.
Wait, I don't get where you bring up Stockholm syndrome. Like she obviously had a problem with her father's death, so she hijacked it to Nepal, started a bar, just trying to pick her life back up, and then she could just drink when she wants, and then someone comes in, gets all misogynistic about it. She's like, I'll drink you under the table. And she does.
And she does, yeah.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else we need to touch on about this movie before we kind of wrap up this episode? Normally, this is where we would start ranking the movies, but since this is the first one, can't really rank it.
So, did you know Raiders of the Lost Ark, number 1?
It's true. No, it's number 1 right now.
As of right now,
this is an audio podcast.
Number 1 with number a bullet.
Number 1 right now.
Yeah, it's also a video. You can also watch the video.
Oh, this is video too. Okay, cool. All right.
All of our podcasts are video, Stoy. Did you know that?
What's a video?
I don't know.
It's a moving picture. Okay, what were you saying?
I don't know. I don't know.
You were saying, did you know something about Indiana Jones, and you were going to drop this like huge nugget of knowledge on us?
Yeah.
That was maybe a nugget, but that wasn't knowledge. Different type of nugget.
Okay. You
You
had the setup like really well.
I know. I was waiting for you to drop some knowledge, and you just sitting there in your orange Wu-Tang shirt or sweatshirt.
Bringing the ruckus.
Life as a shorty shouldn't be so rough. I was gonna, you know what? You're right. I forgot what I was gonna say because my wife came in and she distracts me because I think she's beautiful.
Aww.
Yeah, it's true. Yep, fair. No, fair. We're gross and we love it.
It's okay.
She's
still standing there, isn't she?
No, she's not.
Okay.
No,
right.
No, she's not.
Oh man. Well, I guess that's gonna do it for this episode of Standard Definition. Stoy, Matt, I appreciate your time tonight. This is fun. I'm looking forward to Temple of Doom the next time we do this. Very, very, very fun. You can find Standard Definition on your podcast service of choice and on our YouTube channel. You can also get it 2 weeks early on our Patreon, patreon.com/Boss Rush Network for just $1. Matt.
$1.
Thank you for doing Indiana Jones with us. Where can we find you?
You can find me at infinite_rewind everywhere I want to be. That's Twitter. That's Instagram. That's if you play video games, that is PlayStation and Steam. I have an Xbox tag now because I'm on Game Pass, but I always forget what it is. But yeah, I also host 3 podcasts myself. One called Story Route Zero about video games. One called Trivial Merit, where we make 8-song playlists to make you feel better. And one where a buddy of mine and I nerd out about film called Freereeling It.
Freereeling It.
Mm-hmm.
Stoy, where can we find you?
I am part of the EXP Cast. We're a video game podcast, part of the Boss Rush Network. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at EXP Cast. And my personal self, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Stoy, MKEH.
Interesting. I should follow you.
Are you down with the EXP? Yeah, you know me.
EXP ain't nothing to have with.
God. On that note, you can find me at
where can we find you?
Corey, where can we find you?
I am at Corey and HD. You can follow me at I am Corey. Gosh, you guys just really messed me up. You can follow me at I am Corey and HD on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me hosting the Boss Rush podcast on Wednesday nights live here on twitch.tv/Boss Rush Network. or on podcast services on Mondays. You can also find me hosting Arsenal X, the Xbox podcast with Stoy. And you can find me on After Dark. You can find me here on Standard Def. You can find me a lot of places here on bossrush.net. I want to thank everybody for watching and or listening. And until next time, we love you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.